What's up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the Wise Take MLB First Look. I'm your host, CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And we have a 9-game slate on Monday. Pretty juicy looking slate. Looks like we have a lot of pitching, especially up top. A lot of guys that are expensive. Looks like DraftKings did price up some of these dudes quite a bit. And as far as the cheap guys go, there's not a ton that's super attractive, but there is one guy who seems to be the obvious, and I think he'll end up being the highest owned pitcher on the slate. He typically is on most days, and that is Brandon Mckay. Starting off with cash games, as we do, I'm just going to go ahead and plug him in because I think at 7,500 he makes the most sense at home in a pitcher's park against Seattle, a strikeout happy team, especially against lefties. And his price has gone down because he's coming off of two bad starts. You can see against the Padres, he started off bad. He did kind of rally a little bit, got 7 Ks, but the 6 walks certainly hurt. Raised his pitch count up, and of course he started off the game pretty rough. So the issue, of course, with Mckay is the pitch count. Hasn't thrown more than 93 pitches, and that was on a decent day, a pretty good day. Only 83 against the Padres, so they are cautious with him. But Seattle's a pretty good opponent, and of course he's at home in a really good park. So I do think he makes the most sense. After that, you're probably going to want to grab a stud, or at least a guy that's priced as a stud. I think Bauer makes the most sense. To me, Bauer, in my mind, has the most strikeout upside. When comparing him to Miley, Gonzalez, Gibson, Allard, some of these other guys, maybe you can make an argument for Gallen, but I still think in cash, I still feel more comfortable with Bauer. I don't know if he's the safest option. You can see that this season Bauer has had a relatively lower floor than we're accustomed to. I think he has had a little bit of a drop off, but and also the park. But it is a National League game, so he's going to see the pitcher in the 9-hole, and or 8, depending on what some teams do the 8. But yeah, I think Bauer is the guy that I'd feel more comfortable with. I think Miley is interesting, but I think his price is a little too high. I know the matchup is juicy against Detroit, but Miley's not a guy that's really known for strikeout upside. He's having an awesome year, but most of that is just him learning how to pitch to contact comfortably and kind of skating by. You can see here 6 Ks, 4 Ks, only 1 K against the White Sox coming off of a bad outing, of course. So the issue with Miley is ceiling. He just doesn't hit the ceiling as often. You can argue that his floor has been higher than Bauer's. I think that is, you can definitely argue that, minus this White Sox start, who the White Sox have been pretty pesky to lefties lately anyway. But in general, I totally understand it. I think he'd make more sense in tournaments. I think Bauer still is the guy I would trust more. In terms of that upside, only $500 more, and I think he has a higher ceiling. Don't really want Marco coming off of an awesome outing against the Rays. His price has just been jacked up. He was just 8-7 against Detroit. Didn't do that great. He did do well against Tampa Bay, but a 22.9 isn't really like all that great for a 10-6 price, especially considering that he's already getting kind of close to the Mileys and Bauers. Kyle Gibson, I do think, is kind of interesting against the White Sox. White Sox have not been as good against righties, but Gibson, to me, feels more of a tournament-ish play, just because he himself has also shown a lower floor. So I think Gibson is fine for tournaments. But in cash games, I think I just stick with the Bauer Mckay. I'm going to leave Mckay in here and just kind of go through this. I think there are some other cheap options we can look at, but for now, he does make the most sense to me. I think that in tournaments, Gibson, as we talked about, is certainly interesting. And Zach Gallen is pretty appealing against the Rockies. He did just see the Rockies, but that was in Coors. Very curious to see how he does here at home against the Rockies, who can strike out a lot and are not a very good offense on the road. So if you do go the Gallen-Mckay approach, you do have a lot of money to work with for the bats. which of course is cool. Peters has been pretty good, actually, pretty consistent. But again, now he's 9K. His price is up there, and he's in Arlington, which is just not a fun place to pitch. Same could be argued with the opposing pitcher in that game, which is Colby Allard. Same concept, right? He's been solid, but he's going to be playing in Arlington. It's just not fun. The Angels have been very strikeout heavy, so we'll want to keep an eye on the lineup and see if there's any upside. But I think that this is just too high of a price for this dude. So I think that Bauer, Miley, Gibson, Gallen are probably my favorites for tournaments at the moment. Ivan Nova's been awesome, but at 8,300, I just don't see why I would want to take that risk against the Twins, who are one of the best offenses in the game. I know he pitched well against the Twins in Chicago recently. He had a complete game shutout against the Astros, which is just kind of inexplicable to me. I don't really understand it, but we're seeing him go through this wave where he's pitching really well. We saw something similar with like Len Sparkman, I think. He just had this stretch where he was just pitching great on a results basis, but then eventually he did fall apart, and this might be that spot. So I'm not interested in Nova, but it is kind of hard to get off Mckay. That I'll admit, it's kind of hard. If you were to, I just don't see the guy. I don't think Jorge Lopez is very good. Kyle Freeland has not been good this year, and the D-backs are just not a team that I like to pick on with lefties, plus his pitch count's been a little erratic. So yeah, I think Mckay, and then kind of pick your poison for the SP1. As far as bats go, I mean, Houston's got to be the chalk, right? They've been playing well outside of that hiccup against Ivan Nova, and Edwin Jackson, while he has been much better since pitching for Detroit, he's just not a very good pitcher, and he struggles predominantly with righties, which the Houston Astros have a ton of. So looking at their pricing, they're extremely expensive. They're like a minus 400 favorite, which is just massive. But yeah, Houston would be the standout offense. The issue, of course, is going to be trying to fit them in. So we're going to want to see what value opens up tomorrow to play in between our Astro stacks, and we're going to want to also see what we're left with. If we were to just kind of go down the list here and go with the regular studs, I'm basically taking the most expensive players here. We got the 5. I don't have Correa in this, so you'd have to make a decision on him. But you can see you don't have a ton of money to work with. All these guys well above 5K. Even if we do plug in Mckay, you're still probably going to need a cheap pitcher. Maybe just for shits and giggles, we can go with like John Means, who's been terrible lately, but he has had a bunch of really tough opponents from Boston, Arizona, and the Yankees twice. But you can see even with Mckay and Means, you have 3166. So the Astros are great in theory, but they may have to be relegated to a 3-man. Pick your favorite 3 Astros and go attack with another offense just because of how expensive they are. Unless you're willing to roll the dice on a Freeland or maybe a Zach Davies against the Cardinals. I just don't think Zach Davies is very good personally. He's had games where he's shown up some upside, but I just don't think he's very good. Although if you were going to pick on a team, the Cardinals may not be the worst team to try it, but probably not something I'm interested in. The Nationals have been pretty hot. They get, I think, Trevor Williams. Looks like a lot of their prices have been jacked up too. At least their main guys, but Adams is still cheap if he cracks the lineup. Asdrubal Cabrera, if he ends up playing, is still cheap. Trevor Williams, since getting hurt, hasn't been very good. Kansas City's interesting. Again, another offense. It looks like DraftKings just priced up all these offenses, but they're in Baltimore, so if you're not into Means and you think they can get to Means, they make for an interesting stack. Let's look at the prices on Baltimore. Baltimore's a little more affordable. You can see some of these guys are expensive, but certainly more affordable than the Royals, the Nationals, and the Astros, the 3 teams we've looked at. And if you just kind of come down here, this is definitely doable. It's just a matter if you want to, play Baltimore, who's just not a great team. But you might have to just do what you can do in this scenario. The D-backs, I don't like the fact that Ketel Marte may be hurt, but their prices actually aren't that bad considering. You can see only one player above 5K, and that is Ketel Marte. I think they're an interesting offense. And then, of course, the Twins, another expensive offense, but they will see Ivan Nova again, who just pitched well against them. This time they're at home, so they've gotten a few looks of him. They lead the league in home runs, I think it's a pretty good spot to take a chance on the Minnesota Twins. So there's a lot to like. The pricing is kind of out of control. DraftKings priced up all the good pitchers. They kind of left McKay in the mid-tier by himself. And then they put a bunch of really expensive stacks out there to make things kind of challenging. So we'll be looking for value for sure. No doubt about it. So kind of going through, I guess like leverage-wise, if you weren't playing McKay, I guess Seattle would make the most sense because they are cheap to where you can probably afford two decent pitchers and leverage against the field. But again, it's just like, who are you going to pitch as SP2? Maybe you stick with like a double mid-tier, like a Gibson, not even mid-tier, you're paying up, but like a Gibson Gallon type of deal. And see, maybe that might allow you to get more of these guys. I mean, I'm not in love with the idea of picking on McKay anyway, especially because Seattle's, a lot of their best hitters are actually left-handed. But you can see that you can make that work easily. So maybe if you have like three teams, you do two with McKay and then one hedge stack where you kind of stack up Seattle. That's certainly an option for leverage. But again, for most of my teams, it's going to be hard for me to get off of him. I do think that the Reds are somewhat interesting. A problem is the Padres bullpen is pretty good, but Aquino has been really hot. He's now priced up. The rest of the Reds are all pretty cheap. But I mean, yeah, the Astros definitely standing out like a sore thumb on this slate. The Arlington game's kind of interesting. The Angels have been really bad, but this is a great park boost for them. I'm not really a true believer in Allard just yet, and of course the Ranger bullpen's been terrible. I do think I prefer the Ranger side to the Texas side. Texas has struggled with lefties lately. That's not been the case as much. They've been a little bit better, but the problem with Texas is my favorite hitters in Texas are all left-handed, and that just kind of makes things difficult. So I would lean more towards the Angels side, even though they haven't been great against lefties. And in general, lately, they just haven't been that good. They've actually been striking out a ton, but they're getting a huge park boost here. They typically play well in Arlington, so I can definitely get behind that. So, like I said, it's for a 9-game slate. It's fairly loaded, a lot of different ways to go. Money is going to be the issue here. How much money, what pitching combinations are you comfortable with that you can afford good bats? And how much of those bats can you actually play? Are you going to be able to find a way to do a 5-man Astro stack? I don't know. They're very, very expensive. You don't have to only play the expensive guys. You can get exposure to them. Working in some of their cheaper guys like Chirinos. You could see if like Reddick, who's dirt cheap, so you may have to borrow some of their value in order to get the 5-man to work. But the stud guys are just expensive as hell. But they are the top offense, I would say, the optimal offense if you can make it work. Well, I shouldn't say optimal because their pricing is kind of suboptimal, but they're certainly the most appealing. I'll say that. All right, it's going to do it for this version of the first look. As you can probably tell, I'm exhausted. I went to a bachelor party on Saturday, and it is currently Sunday while I'm recording this, and I'm hurting, man. Hurting. Drank way too much. Had a lot of fun. It was awesome. I'll talk more about it on the Wise Take Nation podcast. I hope you check that out. That'll be streamed on Sunday night, probably in about 15 minutes, about 11 p.m. Eastern. We'll probably get that thing rolling with Stevie Brown, Patty Joe, and myself. And I'll tell you guys a little bit about that. And also, don't forget to check us out at wisestake.com to find out. This show is obviously just a first look. Come find out what we end up on. Find out what our guys end up on after they've done all their research and they're ready to attack this slate. $2.50 all it costs to get a day pass. You'll get access to all the content for one full day. And only thing you won't get is a Slack chat. Also, NFL's coming up. We're still doing the NFL Season Pass promo. You can get the NFL Season Pass, which is normally $149.99 for $99.99 if you buy the Season Pass now with the promo code Early Out NFL 2019. No spaces. Early Out NFL 2019. And again, that's no spaces. Do the dirty. Expires September 1st. Then the price goes up. All right. So top 3 pitchers. We're going to go with Trevor Bauer, Zach Gallen, and Mckay, obviously. So Bauer, Gallen, Mckay. Top 3 stacks. Houston, number 1, if you can find a way to make that work. I'm going to go with Baltimore, number 2, because they're somewhat cheapish. And they get Kansas City in Baltimore, which I think is pretty juicy. And then I'm going to go with the Angels, a little off the wall. There's other teams, of course, that we can go with. You can make an argument for a lot of these guys, but the Angels, maybe their ownership's a little, lower because of how bad they've been, but they're getting a huge park boost, and I just want to take advantage of it. So I'm going to go with the Angels number 3. Dong Watch, I'm going to go with Alex Bregman, number 1. Get the Astros. I'm not going to take all the Astros, I know. I'm not going to do that, though. We will go with... Why the fuck is Drew Butera 4,600? What the fuck? That was a big mistake. We'll go with Justin Upton. How about that from the Angels? And I want to go with Adams, but I don't know that he's playing, so I'm not going to do that. I mean, he should play, but he's not a lock to play. So how about Nick Senzel of the Reds? Bregman, Upton, Nick Senzel. I like that. Pricing isn't too bad either. That's our Dong Watch. So again, sorry for the little raspiness in the voice. Sorry for the yawning. It's been a long weekend, a fun weekend, very exciting weekend. And again, I will talk about it more on the Why Steak Nation podcast, which is coming up shortly. But yeah, should be back in full swing and thing tomorrow. So if you're watching on YouTube, which if you're watching this, it's got to be on YouTube, please click that thumbs up, that like button. Subscribe to the channel with the notifications bell so you are notified whenever we put out one of these awesome videos or any other awesome videos, which we always do on this channel. So make sure you subscribe to the notifications bell. For myself, the entire Why Steak Nation, as always, good luck.
Yeah.